It is the same Congress leadership which unfortunately, has not been able to, let's say, do well electorally in the past 8 years. So therefore, to actually nitpick or to blame somebody, I think it is petty. Well, look, I am not going to go into the contents of Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad's letter. That is his letter, that is his perception, it is done and dusted. He's decided to go his own separate way. But, to really pin it down to the fact that all the problems of the Congress party are because of a particular family or because of a particular individual, I guess is completely and absolutely unfair.
Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. All eyes are on the Congress, with the party gearing up to elect a non-Gandhi as its president. Will this resolve issues or will it add to the party's woes? Is Mallikarjun Kharge unofficially the official candidate or will Dr. Shashi Tharoor trump him? To speak to us about this and much more, we have with us Member of Parliament Manish Tewari, an insider outsider within the Congress. In other words, a member of the group demanding reforms within the party. Mr. Manish Tewari, in this edition of HD's weekly talk show, The Interview. Welcome to the show, Manish, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Let me begin with your quoting Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. Certain offices should not be sought, they should be offered. Congress presidency to be one such office. Just take me through why you quoted him and in the present context, does this apply?
Well, that's an interesting question, Kumkumji. I remember the elections of 1997. The Election Commission of India had issued a circular to all political parties saying that they must hold organizational elections in accordance with their constitution. Under those circumstances, the elections to the Congress organization were scheduled in the May and June of 1997, if I remember correctly. And Mr. Sharad Pawar and the late Mr. Rajesh Pilot had decided to contest. And it was Mr. Pranab Mukherjee's endeavor, someone whom I have known since I was almost 10 or 11 years old, because he had a relationship with my late father. And he had endeavored very, very hard at that point in time to see that if a consensus could be evolved for the Congress presidentship. And he unfortunately was not successful and an election was held.
So, pitching it to this election, would you still say that's relevant?
Well, it was relevant till the 8th of October, which was the last date of withdrawal. But I guess it's not relevant any longer because as we speak, there is an election which is currently underway. And Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge and Mr. Shashi Tharoor are in the fray. So therefore, I guess as it happened in 1997, in 2022, this particular maxim has really lost its relevance.
Sadly, regretfully?
Well, there are no regrets, but you see, political organizations are a different kettle of fish. And unfortunately, the second wave of democratic reforms in India, which is the democratization of our political parties, has not really taken place in the manner it should have. Political parties have really become more closed and more opaque systems over a period of time. It is imperative, if you want to broad-based democracy in India, that elections should not only be held to a particular position at the top, because that is more symbolic rather than substantive. You need to have a proper democratic process which plays itself out at different levels.
You know, you also raised objections to the way party elections were being held, saying even elections to a club are better conducted. Of course, you said this a few months ago. But do you still hold that view?
There was a context to that statement, and the context to that statement was Mr. Madhusudan Mistry's assertion that the electoral roll would only be available to people who decide to run for the office of Congress President. And as a lawyer, I found that to be highly incongruent for the simple reason that an electoral roll for any election is available to everyone, right? Whether you are in the fray, you are a contestant, you're not a contestant, you're an elector, you're not an elector.
So, now in the present context, would you still say that elections to a club are better organized?
Well, you see, the first thing is that it is good that an election is taking place. After a span of almost a quarter of a century, you have an election which is playing itself out. That is good. But uh, till the time it is not followed up with elections to the Congress Working Committee, elections to the Pradesh Congress Committees, elections of the AICC delegates, I don't think that the process will be complete.
You know, talking of timelines, the Congress has waited for a quarter of a century for electing the president. Do you think the same timeline would perhaps be followed when it comes to election down the line?
Till the time you do not uh, have regulation which is rooted in a statutory underpinning, and it is not externally monitored, it is never ever oversight. And as I was saying, that for India to get to the next level of its democratic evolution, not only in the Indian National Congress but in every political party, the six national parties who are registered with the Election Commission, the state parties who are registered with the Election Commission, you need to have an externally monitored electoral process playing itself out.
So, is that how you would have liked the Congress president's election also to be held?
Absolutely. Ideally speaking, that is how it really should have played itself out. The fact is that, if there can be an election to the office of the President of the Indian National Congress, I'm sure that down the line, there would be enough people who would be willing to contest at various levels. And as I earlier stated, that this process would be incomplete if you do not have elections to the Congress Working Committee, you do not have elections to the Pradesh Congress Committees, and you do not have the election of the AICC delegates.
Within a quarter of a century?
Well, I think immediately before the plenary of the Congress meets, now that you have set the ball rolling, you have kicked the ball forward, it would be logical and it would stand to reason and rationale if this process then unfolds itself at every level.
Let me ask you upfront, why are you so unhappy with the party?
I'm not. In fact, that is a complete misnomer that I am unhappy in any manner. And I do feel that given the current environment in the country, the Indian National Congress has a very, very important role to play. So, therefore, whatever suggestions that we make or whatever critique that we offer, that is not out of any personal angst or unhappiness. It is only predicated or motivated by one simple factor, that is, how do you strengthen this institution which has had the longest association with modern India going back to 1885.
But you know, somewhere you do break the tradition, which is normally these things or the grumbling or the rumbling was all within the party. Now it is out in the open and it's public.
Well, I guess times are changing. So, therefore, there was a time when, let's suppose, much of this would happen internally.
Or not happen at all.
Or not happen at all. So, I guess it is not only a reflection of the times that we live in, but also of the fact that people are more willing to speak their mind, call a spade, and obviously, in an institution where there has been a culture of silence, if somebody speaks out, he is considered to be either personally unhappy or driven by some unqualified ambition, or for that matter, a plain downright dissident, or somebody who's looking for options elsewhere, and so therefore he or she is profiling himself.
You've listed these categories. Where do you place yourself in all these
Well,
or any of these?
well,
And second, do you think this changing situation which you're talking about is a reflection of the kind of leadership which the Congress is throwing up now?
Well, you see, first of all, to answer your category question, neither, as I've been trying to explain over the last 10 or 12 minutes, that it has nothing to do with me personally or any aspirations which I may or I may not have. I guess, you reach an inflection point in your life, especially if you've been associated with an institution for a fairly long period of time, as you've been with a particular institution, whereby the self recedes, and it is really the welfare of the institution that comes to the forefront. And therefore, you then start articulating uh, things which other people who might be in a leadership position within that organization, find it unpalatable or find it difficult to digest.
And what about reflection of on the leadership, the Congress leadership?
You see, ultimately, leadership is a function of your ability to be able to win elections in a democracy,
Which is
right?
not happening with the
So,
Congress at
so,
all.
so, 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 therefore, while uh, you can also have an alternative model in trying to be that moral force in a country, eventually it is your hands on the levers of governance which allow you to steer the country in a particular direction. And I think that is one objective which no political organization should lose sight of.
Would you accuse, and I use the word accuse, the current present Congress leadership of that?
I think again, Kumkumji, that would be reducing it to a binary. For the simple reason that, on balance, if you look at it, it is the same Congress leadership which was instrumental in both UPA 1 and UPA 2 coming into existence. And it is the same Congress leadership which, unfortunately, has not been able to, let's say, do well electorally past in the past 8 years. So, therefore, to actually nitpick or to blame somebody, I think it is petty.
You know, when you say same leadership, I don't agree with you because UPA 1, UPA 2, it was different. Mrs. Gandhi was at the helm, even at the party. Now things have changed, people have changed, and there are younger people or another setup which is taking charge of the party, and probably that is where the decline began and the inertia which you talk of.
The answer is yes and no. You are right that there is maybe a different set of people, I would not say essentially younger set of people, who are in leadership positions. But I also would find it a trite unfair to blame them, because I think where you are missing the wood for the trees, because when you do not address the fundamental reasons of your decline, and you maybe make it personality centric.
You know, you spoke of personality, but Congress has always been a personality driven party.
Which is not essentially true. You see, even at a point in time when you had very tall personalities or a personality at the national level, you always had people of I would not say commensurate stature, but of stature. Even in the states. If you bring it down to a one horse race or one pony trying to pull such a heavy cart, at some point in time there will be a stumble. So there is no substitute to really having robust leadership at the state and the district levels if an organization has to survive.
Is it a stumble or has the Congress cart really broken now?
Well, look, in the long march of history, right, even 75 years, which is the time that we've been independent, is but a blip. 8 years is like the flick of an eyelid. So, therefore, those who are trying to write the obituary of the Indian National Congress, I think, do not have an understanding of history. This is, I guess, cyclic. And if you are able to reinvent yourselves, there is nothing which will stop you from landing on your feet.
Coming to the present developments and, of course, the election, do you agree with Mr. Shashi Tharoor's statement that Mr. Kharge will continue with the existing system and not bring about the changes that are required?
But when he talks about change, what is the real change that he's talking about? Look, this is a nuts and bolts job. This is not about grandiloquence and about the flair, for the larger narrative. This is a job which involves getting down into the weeds and getting your hands and feet dirty. And someone who has grown in the organization, for example, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, and that's why somebody like me also endorsed his candidature, I think understands the Congress ethos. And for someone who understands the Congress ethos, if he has the conviction of courage and the will, I think he will be able to apply the correctives. But yes, if you obviously lack either the conviction of courage or the will, then nothing will happen. So, these are very rhetorical electoral statements that I can do it, he can't. But I have still to come across the changes which Dr. Tharoor is talking about, which all of us have not spoken about for the last 25 years.
Some feel that Mr. Kharge is unofficially the official candidate. What is your take?
Well, going by the fact that a substantive number of Congress leaders, including the entire current working committee, has proposed his name, you could possibly say that he is the unofficial official candidate. But Mr. Kharge, of course, has been denying this vehemently and saying that he's contesting in his personal or in his individual capacity. But given the overwhelming number of people who are recognized as Congress leaders across the country, having signed on to his campaign, possibly it creates the perception that you're talking about.
The key word is control. One message is, and this is after the Rajasthan fiasco, that the Gandhis have no control over the party where their writ once ran. And the second is that they would remote control the party if they're, whoever is the president.
Well, first of all, insofar as Rajasthan is concerned, I think Mr. Ashok Gehlot has explained the situation and the circumstances that the MLAs had a particular view and they expressed it rather aggressively, which is something also a break from the past, the break that I was talking about.
Break or Gandhi's losing control?
No, I think that people are just feeling strongly about issues, and they don't mean to disrespect anybody, and least of all a family which has been associated with the Congress party for as long as the Congress party has been in existence. I don't think that's the objective. And they, of course, would be conspirators and courtiers who would like to convey this perception. I guess they had certain strong feelings about how developments had panned out in the last 2.5, 3 years, and they expressed it. Insofar as remote controlling is concerned, you see, that seriously depends upon the gentleman who is occupying a particular office. Obviously, you consult everybody. Obviously, you talk to people, and those who've been at the helm of the party for a long time have institutional wisdom and institutional capacity and an institutional memory. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. But let's see, once the results are out, how do the coming 1.5 years, which are very crucial for this country, play themselves out.
You have said, and I'll quote, that the party and India have started thinking differently. Would you explain this and what you really meant when you said this?
Well, essentially, when you are not able to really win the democratic sweepstakes, and it happens repeatedly over and over again, obviously that lends you to conclude that there is a gulf between how you perceive things and how people are perceiving things. And that is the gulf which needs to be bridged. And I think the effort which Mr. Rahul Gandhi is currently making by doing this long walk across the length of the country is essentially to try and remedy and rectify that situation and bring about that reconnect, if it happens, and God willing it should happen, which unfortunately seems to have gone missing.
So, do you feel like some or many do that the Bharat Jodo Yatra is working, and would you at some point join it?
Of course, that goes without saying, in the sense that at that point in time, if not earlier, when it enters my constituency or it comes to Punjab, as is the norm, that people from wherever it is passing have been kind of participating in it, and it's quite possible that I, may go and walk for a day or two even earlier.
I thought because you are sulking, maybe you wouldn't.
Well, in the sense, you see, there is that perception, as you've been trying to belabor for the past 20 minutes, that there is some personal difficulty that I have. But as I've explained to you, that it is well in the realm of imagination of people who cannot understand, or who fail to understand that genuine candor does not really translate into dissidence.
You know, you were part of the group, and I will not use the word G23 because you'll say it's the media's creation, which wanted internal democracy and which wanted elections. And elections are being held. Would you say that this is your definition of internal democracy?
Some of us came together to articulate the concerns that we had. And those concerns were valid and germane. It is unfortunate that some of the people who were a part of that group then decided to go their own ways. Right? Some of them went and became members of parliament from another party. Other people have taken another course of action.
And some are still preparing to go?
Well, I do not know whether some are preparing to go or not, but essentially, I don't think that effort, which was again very badly misunderstood, was an effort at dissidence or weakening the party. I think it was a genuine effort made by people who had the good of the party at heart. But then, as I said, that some of them made their own independent choices. And I guess if you live in a democratic polity, you cannot really grudge anybody his or her choice.
Would you be one at some point who could consider making what you call a democratic choice?
I continue to be where I am, notwithstanding the fact that it's been 2.5 decades since this question has been asked.
You won't give me a different answer?
Well, there is no different answer. As I explained to you, or I've been attempting to explain to you, I do not know whether I've been successful or not, is that, when you grow in an organization, you try and see that whatever you consider is the best for that organization is conveyed to whosoever is in a position to be able to implement it or to operationalize it, and which is exactly what the effort has been.
But when you say grow in an organization, people like Ghulam Nabi Azad literally grew in the Congress, and yet he left.
As I said when I was answering your earlier question, that some of us who were a part of that endeavor then decided to make their own choices. Now, in a democracy, Can you grudge them those choices? I guess the jury is really out on that.
You know, he largely blamed Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Would you agree with that perception?
Well, look, I am not going to go into the contents of Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad's letter. That is his letter, that is his perception. It is done and dusted. He's decided to go his own separate way. So, therefore, that is a realm that I would not really want to enter into.
Finally, do you think a non Gandhi as president of the Congress is the answer and will solve problems?
Look, as of now, there is an electoral process playing itself out. On one hand, you have Mr. Kharge, who brings eons of electoral and political experience to the table. You know, on the other hand, you have Dr. Tharoor, who has his own skill sets and definitely has a niche for himself in the Indian polity. In my estimation, that the nuts and bolts of the organization are better done by someone who's actually spent a lifetime in the service of that organization. And that is where Mr. Kharge actually brings a specific value add to the table.
Yes, but the fact of a non Gandhi, you know, being president, would that solve
Well,
problems?
I think, you know, as I earlier said, that is being very unfair to people who've also given their best to this organization. As, see, for the better part of these 22 years, leaving aside a small integrum from 2017 to 2019, it is Mrs. Sonia Gandhi who has been the president of the Indian National Congress. And I think under her stewardship, the Congress party, in terms of the 2 5-year governments that it formed, did exceedingly well. But, you know, to really pin it down to the fact that all the problems of the Congress party are because of a particular family or because of a particular individual, I guess is completely and absolutely unfair.
You spoke about people giving their best, and you also spoke about 2017 to 2019. Would you say that in those 2 years, the best was not good enough?
Well, I don't think that's also a fair critique if you really look at it. You almost came close to winning Gujarat. You won 3 other states before you headed into the national elections. To say that Mr. Rahul Gandhi did not give his best, given the fact that the electoral record speaks to the contrary, would be completely unfair. Again, you know, and I keep coming back to this Kumkumji, it is not about Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, it is not about Rahul Gandhi, it is not about any other individual. I think the fundamental place where we miss the wood for the trees is that there are structural problems which have crept into the Indian National Congress and which happens to any organization as it grows and it matures. And till the time you do not address those in a systemic manner and merely keep finger pointing at individuals, you will get nowhere.
You know, politically, not accepting responsibility or an office is good strategy because it gives you power to a particular family, I'm saying, and no accountability.
You know, people have their own approach to politics. You know, certain people feel that politics is only about power, it is only about positions, it is only about being able to occupy those positions. Other people seem to have, or other people may have a totally different view as to why they are in public life. So I don't think the sine qua non that we attach to a political office is really that important.
Mr. Manish Tewari, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and thank you for taking most of the questions.
Thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. Absolutely.